Hey there, ladies and gentlemen. It is time for our last math video of Unit 1. Woo! Lesson 112, reasonable answers. Okay? I can solve word problems involving addition and subtraction of mixed numbers and check that the answers are reasonable. In other words, that they make sense. All right? So please write the lesson number at the top of your page and your I can statement, and we're going to go ahead and get started. So pause if you need to. So, in this word problem, it says Becca bought a bag of flour. She used 2 3/4 cups for pizza dough and 4 1/3 cups for bread. If the new bag had 20 cups of flour, how much flour is left? Well, we got a couple ways to do this. You can see this is going to involve a couple of steps here. Okay, it's not just a one step. First of all, I see how much flour is left. All right, that sounds like a subtraction problem. Okay, but I've got two numbers that I need to be able to get out of this 20 before I can figure that out. All right, so one way I could do that is I could add 2 3/4 and 4 1/3 to find the total amount of flour she used, and then I could subtract that from the 20 cups that she started with. Okay. Another way I can do that is I can subtract 2 3/4 from 20 to find the amount left after the pizza dough, and then I can subtract another 4 1/3 from that result. Or you can start with the 4/3 and then go to the 2/4. That part doesn't really matter. Now let's talk about equations. You're going to need an equation to solve this. My first one involves some parentheses, because remember, when you're solving an equation that has parentheses, those are the first thing that you have to tackle. So I wanted to make sure that I did my addition here before I did anything else. And I used F for flour. That's just a little hint that I would give anybody when you are going to set up your equations. Make your variable the same thing your unit has to be. In this case, my unit is flour. So I want to make sure that I am using the same variable, so when I have to put my unit on my answer, I remember what that is. So F equals 20 minus 2 3/4 plus 4 1/3. I would add this first and subtract it from 20. Or I could just do the second way we talked about. F equals 20 minus 2 3/4 minus 4 1/3. All right. So let's take a look at this. I'm going to use the first one. That's the method I prefer. You can use whichever one you like. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to convert these into twelfths. And when you see that, I've got 13 twelfths. So you can do the math too at home if you want to just double check to make sure I did this right. But I've got 20 minus 6 13 twelfths. So the first thing I notice, I've got a fraction greater than 1 here. So I'm going to have to convert that. I'm going to pull 12 twelfths out, add the whole number to 6, and you'll see that I end up with 7 1/12. Now I'm going to stack these. I prefer to look at them this way. It's easier for me. It works better in my mind. I look right here, 20, and I have nothing over here to subtract the 1/12 from. So I'm going to need to borrow from the 20. That's going to give me 19 12 twelfths. I can put the original subtraction problem underneath it, subtract my fractions first. I get 11 twelfths, 12 and 11 twelfths. That's what I come up with. 12 and 11 twelfths cups of flour is what I come up with. Now, the question I want to ask myself is this a reasonable answer? Does it make sense? We're going to use estimation to check. All right, so I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to look at 2 9 twelfths, and I want to round that. Now, this is a tricky one because 9 falls right in the middle of 6 and 12. All right, but what you have to remember is think like you were going to round a regular whole number without a fraction at all. If it ended in 5 or if it was halfway in between, we always round up. The same rule applies here. Even though it's right in the middle, we're going to round that up to the next whole number. Okay, so 2 9 twelfths is going to become 3. And 4 4 twelfths, 4 twelfths is closer to 6 twelfths than it is to 0 twelfths, so that's going to become 4 1/2. So 20 minus 3 plus 4 1/2. I'm going to add those together, get 20 minus 7 1/2. All right. So what I want to do here, I didn't put the whole problem together, but you need to remember you're going to have to borrow from 20 to subtract, or you could do 20 take away 7 is 13, and take away 1/2 more. That's going to give you 12 1/2. Since 12 1/2 is within 1/2 of 12 and 11 twelfths, okay, it's 5 twelfths away, my answer is reasonable. On the next page, I'm going to go through the wording, because when you go through your word problems, and you're going to be working on these in class, you have to explain how you found your answer, how you know it's reasonable based on what you did. So let's look at this word problem. Alex ran 3 1/2 miles on Saturday. He ran another 2 5/8 miles on Sunday. How many miles did he run altogether? I see altogether, I think addition. Okay, that's a key word, tells me that's what I'm doing with these. So M for miles equals 3 1/2 plus 2 5/8. Well, I'm going to round this 2 5/8 to the nearest half. That's going to be 2 1/2. So I'm going to end up with, oops, I'm sorry, I did that the wrong way. I got to do the equation first. I'm jumping ahead of myself. Sorry. I'm going to convert 3.5 to 3 4/8. And I'm going to add those together. Okay. Again, I stack them because it makes more sense to me. 4/8 plus 5/8 is 9/8. 3 and 2 is 5. I got to convert that over because I have a fraction greater than 1. And when I do that, I end up with 6 1/8. So my answer here is 6 1/8 miles. So does my answer make sense? Is this reasonable? Well, this is where I'm going to convert that 2 5/8 to 2.5. So 3.5 plus 2.5 equals 6, because 2 plus 3 is 5, and a half plus half is a whole, so that gives me 6. So here's my explanation. Yes, it is a reasonable answer because 3.5 is already rounded to the nearest half, and 2 5/8 is about 2.5. The answer should be about 3.5 plus 2.5 or 6. Okay, so when you go to do your practice problems, after you write them down, you might want to back the video up and take a look at the way I worded that so you can do that for your answer, okay? All right, let's look at another one. At her birthday party, Cassie's family ate 1 1/3 birthday cakes in all. They ate 5/6 of the chocolate cake and some vanilla cake. How much vanilla cake did they eat? Okay, so we've got an unknown here, okay? I don't know, but I know the total and I know one of the fractions. So when I put my equation together, I've got 5/6 because we know that's how much chocolate cake they ate plus some amount of cake equals 1 1/3 because this is the total amount that they ate. Now, I'm going to convert 1 1/3 to 6 so that I can work with these two numbers. There's a couple ways that I can actually go about solving these, okay? I need to figure out 5/6 plus how many 6 equals 1 2/6, okay? That's one way I could do it. I could also do it as a subtraction problem. So I'm going to start with this way first. I'm going to do the count up method. So I asked myself, how far is it for me to go from 5/6 to 1 whole? Well, that's 1/6. How about from 1/6 to 1 2/6? Well, that's 2/6. If I add 1/6 plus 2/6 together, that gives me 3/6 or 1/2. Now, some of you would not probably choose to do it this way, and that's okay. Some of you would just recognize, hey, I could subtract. I know my total. I know what one part is. I could subtract one from the other to figure that out. Okay, so I've got 1 2/6 minus 5/6. 2/6 cannot do it, so I'm going to have to borrow from the 1. I'm going to make that into 8/6 because 2/6 plus 6/6 is 8/6. I'm going to subtract the original 5/6, which gives me 3/6 or 1/2. So in either case, I've come up with C equals 1/2. So I came up with I ate half the vanilla cake. Again, is this a reasonable answer? Well, let's go through this. 5/6 plus C equals 1 1/3. Remember, I'm going to go ahead and round these. Okay, so that means that 1 plus C equals 1 1/2 because 5/6 is closer to 1. 1 1/3 is closer to 1 1/2. So what would C have to be to complete this? Okay. Well, it would have to be 1/2 because that's what I said it was going to be here. So 1 plus 1/2 equals 1 1/2. C equaling 1/2, so it is a reasonable answer. All right. Again, this is one of those rare cases where the fraction exactly matches our estimate. So here is the wording that I use. Yes, this is a reasonable answer because 5/6 is about 1, and 1 1/3 is about 1 1/2. The answer should be about 1 1/2 minus 1, or 1/2, or half the cake. So that is how we're going to go about answering those and explaining those as we go through our word problems. So now it's your turn. Here's your practice problem. Write an equation to solve the problem. Explain how you know your answer is reasonable, and be sure to show your work. I need to know how you're converting those numbers. So here's our problem now. Jaden read 1/5 of a book on Saturday and another 2/6 of a book on Sunday. What fraction of the book does he have left to read? Not how much has he read so far, what does he have left to read? Okay, so you're going to put your answer down here and you're going to explain to me, is your answer reasonable? Just remember, we're talking about the book, so I'm going to give you a hint if you're a little confused on how to start this. Remember, the book would equal 1 whole. It'd be the whole book, all right? So kind of think about that as you're working through the problem. If you have questions, we'll go over them in class. See ya.